Hi, Dr. Kemp. It is so good to be with you here today.
Hi, Isha. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really my pleasure to have you here. So I just want to, for those of you who are listening, I just want to, Amanda, Dr. Kemp is a dear mentor of mine, and she is the founder of Racial Justice from the Heart. She is a racial justice and mindfulness mentor who helps leaders be effective and have a strong voice for racial justice and equity. And she completed her undergraduate studies at Stanford University and earned a PhD from Northwestern University. And you also do other things, Dr. Kemp, right? You do theater, poetry.
Yes. I'm the founder of Theater for Transformation.
Yes, amazing. Yeah, so what I would love to get into with you is talking about a little bit about what brought you to the work of uniting mindfulness and racial justice. I feel like that's really important. Like, you know,
Yeah,
yeah, your why and what it is.
100%. I mean, that was when I made a left turn. So I'm 54, and I would say I've been doing racial justice work consciously probably since I was 16. And but it wasn't until 2015 when I started doing compassionate self-care and self-compassion mindfulness work that I experienced a huge shift in the way in which I did racial justice work. And what I mean to say is that in 2014, when Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, and that kicked off the sustained movement, to make Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Um, I it was like a slap, honestly, like the details of that. I mean, I could still cry about it. How they left his body in the street for 5 hours to traumatize everybody else in that neighborhood. And the ongoing, the sustained uh protests from the young people, primarily young people in Ferguson, really like said, Amanda, what are you doing? Who are you? Where are you directing yourself? How much of an impact am I really having? And that combined with getting an email from my son, in 2015, like a year later, I got an email from my son when he was 16, basically telling me how he was crying, that he found himself punching a tree. And because of the way he was taking in the social media about how Black lives, especially the lives of Black boys and men, did not matter. So it was like emotional. It was a lot, you know what I mean? And and I just took myself over to this little it was a self-compassion book group. I felt like I need help. You know what I mean? I just felt like my mind is running, I'm upset. I'm in an interracial marriage. In fact, that was the first year of us being in interracial marriage together. My husband's European American. He brought in 3 European American children. I have 2 Black kids. And then America is like getting more and more racially polarized. And of course, Donald Trump won in 2016. So all of that meant that, girl, I was like tight, and upset a lot. And so I took myself this little self-compassion. It was called Mindful Self-Compassion. I was the only person of color in it, but it introduced me to some key concepts that helped me to stop my suffering. It helped me to stop extending the pain into suffering. That's what I want to say. I became conscious of how am I extending pain into suffering, and what are some things I can do to extend compassion over here, so I didn't just have pain. And those self-compassion processes, which involve me being very present, increasing my presence, and coming to distance myself from my thoughts started to open up some space for me, so that I had, so that I just was, I just got calmer and honestly more green on the inside, because I was burning up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So that's like you're describing this process of like pulling back from the suffering, like not needing to suffer, but then also like not like soothing yourself in the painful stuff that is part of life, and that is, especially for people of color, more painful, especially when like the world is burning up, the United States is burning up. And so being able to soothe yourself and take care of yourself within that as well.
Yeah, like there's a couple things that hit me. One of them was one of the first things this teacher said was, your mind is not here to make you happy.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden I was like, true? And then I started thinking, what the heck goes on in here? Mostly it does not. She was right. But I was like, but what I had to deal with was, well, why should it make me happy? Because we live in amidst injustice. People are suffering. And so I could stay there with people are suffering, it's unjust, I'm unhappy. Okay, I could really stay there, but do I want to live there? I mean, I even if I'm willing to live there, do I want my child to live there? You know what I'm saying? I didn't bring him in the world so he could just be unhappy, right?
Right.
So when she put that up there, I started to think about you know, when she said the mind was built for defense, um, I just started thinking about um, how, what truth is multi-level, and it is not quite true that this planet is HE double hockey sticks. You know what I'm saying? That is true to an extent. It is true, but it's also true that it is a paradise. It's also true that I could experience joy, and
Mhm.
joy doesn't have to come from what Donald Trump did. You know what I mean? I just started thinking like, wait a minute. I really don't want to be I don't want someone else to own me and own my
Mm,
reactions and my emotions.
right.
And I don't even want my ego to own my reactions and my emotions. I mean, you know what I needed something more compassionate, something wiser, something deeper to be in charge.
Yeah, and it just sounded like when you were talking just now, it just sounded like so much more space was created.
Yes. That's to me, when I think about racial justice and mindfulness and bringing them together, I'm talking about approaching racial justice from a spaciousness
Mhm,
rather
mhm.
than from a tightness, you
Yes,
know?
yes, yes.
Um, so yeah.
I think you just said it right now. I think that is the biggest lesson that I learned from you, was because I was coming into those conversations already with some tightness, and then it would pop. And you, through the 5 steps that you teach, it's just like it slowed everything down, and it made me, I want you to talk about the 5 steps, but it just helped me like not be like hooked into an outcome. That was huge. That just changed everything for me. So if you could talk a little bit about those steps and maybe how you
Yes.
develop them, that would be so valuable.
Yes, yes, yes. And I offer this as something that has been helpful to me.
Yes.
And by no means is it the only thing, right?
Yeah.
Everyone does what works for them. But what worked for me was, after I had been doing this mindful self-compassion, literally, I wrote a love letter to myself. I was saying things in the mirror. I was, doing a metta loving kindness meditation for me and for people who had problems with. So I'm just telling you, I had to invest over here
You did all the things.
before I could do these steps,
Yes.
because that is what gives you the capacity and the spaciousness.
Yes. It's
So
great in yourself.
yes, yes. So here are the 5 steps that I evolved to, how do you have a difficult conversation about racism? And so the first step is to check in with your wise self. Am I available? Can I be present for this conversation? Am I hurting? Do I need my attention? Do I have to use the bathroom? Girl, do you know I've had conversations about, I've been waylaid on the way to the bathroom, and then I've got to pee, and I'm trying to be polite, and I'm also, getting triggered by, someone's remarks. You know what I'm saying about what they read in the newspaper? I was like, no, 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 no. So consciously choose, and it is 100% okay to say, not now, read this first, or no, I don't want to talk with you about this. You do have choice, or you can say yes. But before you say that yes, really check in with your wise self to make sure that you are physically and emotionally stable. Okay.
Yeah. And in integrity with your systems, like whatever's happening with you.
Yes, yes. Because what I found was that I was responding to these conversations, to people rolling up on me, whatever, and and not even acknowledging myself first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so that's the first thing, is to check in with your wise self to make sure that you have the capacity at the moment. And if you don't, like I said, you can delay it and say, give me a few minutes, I'll meet you, give me a day, next week is good, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or you could say, based on what you're hearing from the person, they're really not ready for you yet until they've actually read a little bit more, because you're not going to be presenting mass incarceration one-on-one.
Yeah.
It's unfair to yourself to say, I've got to, present the research that someone spent years organizing, and now I'm going to take it on myself to give the cliff notes to this person, right? I'm just saying, it's okay to say to someone, um, I hear what you're asking for, and I'd be willing to have a conversation with you, but I want you to check out these 2 resources first, because they really help me understand this issue. Do you know what I mean? And then if they've done some work, then okay, I'm willing to meet them. But if they've done no work and they just want to roll up and have me pour into them, that's me feeling used, And then of course I'm feeling tight and I'm upset, and voices getting raised and emotions are flowing, and someone just rolled up. Why should they get all of that juice from you?
That's right.
Why should you give them all of that when they have done nothing to prepare for this conversation? So, as people of color, I feel it's very important for us to ask people to come into it with some level of preparation and responsibility, not just say, Amanda, what are your thoughts about? You know?
Yeah.
And then the second step is like, so once they've done that, and you feel, or you're like, yeah, I'm ready to roll with you, you know, hold space for transformation. And Isha, whenever I don't do it, it doesn't go well. And when I do it, I'm like amazed. So all I can say is, God, please somehow help me. Give me a sign when I forget and I stop holding space for transformation. Because holding space for transformation is like, it's like me taking a moment to ground myself into receiving and being unconditional love and unconditional acceptance. So I'm just letting myself be part of that flow, letting myself be poured into by the universe, the divine, whatever works for you, your language, earth. And it just helps me to, I don't know, to drop out of that tight mind, clinging mind, grasping mind.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have a whole process for how you can do it. We have an 8-minute version, we've got a 5-minute version, so I'd be happy to share that with you all. And then the third step, once you have gotten yourself into that flow, you drop down, you've You said to yourself that I'm willing to be, or I am unconditional love and unconditional acceptance. The third step is to actually lean in and to listen to the other person first.
Mhm.
This is why I say you need to do that step one first. You need to pour into yourself first so that you have that spaciousness to lean in, to hear somebody without taking what they say, without letting yourself get hooked or triggered by what someone else says in their ignorance or their well-meaningness. Or, I'm assuming if you've chosen to talk to them, you must think they're worthy of your time. If you thought they were just being plain mean and evil, you would decline the conversation. But I'm just saying it's a leaning in, and that's actually, we don't have a lot of practice in that.
No, and I'm shaking my head because it is so, what you're talking about is you are cultivating this capacity to hold. And that is huge because that is a whole practice in and of itself. And then to bring it to difficult conversations around race is just another level of it.
Yes. Yes. And I know from when I've done it and from like you've done it and other women of color, European Americans have done it. They write me back. They literally write me back and they say, "Wow, it works." So I know when you think about leaning into somebody who you disagree with, or leaning into someone who's really ignorant, or saying things that kind of just reflect the white script, you could say, why would I give that any time, Amanda? And I'm just saying to you, well, if you chose to be in the conversation, for some reason, you chose to be in the conversation with them, then trust yourself. Know that your turn to speak is going to come. Know that what you need to say to them is going to come. But before you do your saying, just practice leaning in to listen to them and listen with your heart. Listen with your heart. And then after you've given them a chance to say their thing, to really express themselves, be with it, then ask them. Step 4 is to ask, would you like to hear what it's like for me? Because it's reminding them they have power in the conversation. You're not just going to share something with them if they don't want to hear, but it's also reminding you that, do you really want to share something valuable with someone who hasn't first said, yes, I'm listening? You know what I mean?
A consent.
Right. It's like going for consent, and it's giving them the right to say yes or no, just like you gave yourself the right to say yes or no at the beginning of the conversation. So you see, Isha, why this is countercultural on so many levels, because, patriarchal culture, white supremacy culture, capitalist culture, when did capitalism ask for permission to go and extract somebody's wealth, right?
Yes.
Okay, it is a non-consensual model. And so what I'm saying is, build consent. And that is why, if you're hurting, if like when I got that email from my son about what he was feeling, I couldn't hold space for someone else. I couldn't hold space. I was in the middle of my pain, right? So that's time for me to decline the conversation.
That's right.
So I can knit me together again. So I'm not coming into the conversation with my fragmented self.
Yeah.
And and I'm just saying this out loud. Um, this is asking for a lot of self-care. And it's not like you did your mindfulness series a year ago, or you did it 3 months ago, you're good. Honestly, it's ongoing. And I think that's why we need to schedule, when we're going to be doing our retreats. Make sure we have a mentor or a coach who is going to incorporate that into, your work together. Because if you don't build it in to your life, if I don't build it into my life, it's going to gradually become very, very small, and it'll be something that I used to do. Like I used to run the marathon. You know what I mean? And you just can't, if you stop training, you can't just run the marathon because you ran it a year ago.
Yeah.
So, and then finally, step 5 is to reflect on yourself at the end of the conversation. Ask yourself, what do I need? And give it to yourself. If you need a bath, give yourself a bath. A glass of water, give yourself a glass of water. Time to pray. See, so it's a lot of it is about you. You control, or you're responsible. You have power in all of these steps.
Yes. Yeah, it's something that, a word that I've been using a lot is sovereignty. When you talked about like triggers and sort of like noticing those triggers and not hooking into them, right? And having those boundaries at the beginning in step 1, checking in with your wise self, like all of those pieces fit into what I consider sovereignty. And so sovereignty is power. It's like coming into this conversation from a place of personal power.
Yeah, I like that word, sovereignty, especially from people who in our lineage, we have a lineage of being owned, where our sovereignty has been taken, where our lands have been colonized, stripped from us. We've been, etc. Reclaiming our sovereignty, seeing this as part of your expression of sovereignty is countercultural.
Yeah.
Even inside our movements and inside our communities, because I don't know about you, Isha, but I have a lot of models of Black women sacrificing, and not a lot of models of pouring in, creating spaciousness and presence, pausing, slowing down. I mean, I have been exposed to Black women who use prayer, um, but I didn't have anybody who was modeling self-compassion. Sometimes people use religion or prayer to really put themselves down. I'm not worthy. I shouldn't be able to kiss your feet. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So this is different. This is actually different.
It's another level.
Yeah, it is another level. And it's hard to stay committed to it by yourself. You need community, affirmation, reminders.
Yeah, that's right. That's really important. Yeah, the piece around community is really crucial, right? We all need each other. Yeah. This is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I also wanted to also ask you, let me pull it up here. You have this business now, and I just want you to share a little bit of your story in creating this. Like you had this personal experience in 2015 with your son, all of these pieces, and you created a whole business around it, and like a business that was like based on a passion, right? And through the love of your son and wanting to create a better world for your son, you created this enterprise, this endeavor. So I want you to share a little bit of like how you came to trust yourself and what you know, and all of those pieces.
So a couple of things. Number one is that some of us out here have a tendency to start up. I don't know, because I started a theater company during the Great Recession. I didn't know it was going to become a Great Recession when I started it, truth be told, but there it was there. And it was my primary source of income for about 6 years. And that was hard. So I have to admit, I do have I have a willingness to take a risk for something that I feel 100% alive in. You know what I mean? Um, so, and you asked about, so how did I get the courage? So I just want to say, for me, after I started the theater company and I stepped away from the theater company after about 6 years, 8 years, I wanted to go work for somebody else, frankly. I was like, woo, being the everything is exhausting. I'm ready to have a job, and around that time, someone who we both know, Neo Span, invited me to be part of a project that she was starting up. And so my role was to bring my racial justice background, lens, and skills to her startup. And, and as these things happen, when you work with someone on their projects, those projects, they have ebb and flows. So I was never an employee for her. And then eventually we hit a point where it was complete. Like my work with her project was complete. And, and she was authentic, enough to let me be aware of that, that this was coming to completion. And so I needed to take some steps for what am I going to be doing to generate money for myself, my family. And it was the fact that it was complete. And I felt I had also, through working with her, built up a skill that made me say, okay, I'm going to launch my own, consultancy. And then over time, I invested in a lot of training because I have a PhD in performance studies and performance of race. I had no background in business, or sales, which I started to understand is the lifeblood of an enterprise. But I didn't know all that. I thought the lifeblood was, the content that you share with people. So I spent most of my time, as many of us do, developing content and, and making very little money. And I made a turn when I invested in sales, when I invested in how do I learn how to sell things, how to create things in a way that you can sell them, right? Like packaging and things like that. So I invested a little bit at a time, and then I made a big leap of an investment over the course of between 2015 and now we're in 2021. So I made I started with a $1,000 course, trying to help me as a, mission-centered business. It was just like giving me some basic stuff. And we created a mastermind. It was me and some other women, we're trying to get all the juice we could out of this $1,000 course. And it did get us to another level because I wrote a book. Someone in my mastermind edited it for me so I could believe myself that I did have a book. So what I'm saying is that each step along the way, I invested. I ended up having to invest more and more of my money, my nest egg, to grow the business, to grow my skill, actually. And then in 2020, COVID, right before things started shutting down in March, around mid to late January, I realized, even before then, maybe December, right before COVID, I started realizing I have no cash flow. Where's all the money in this business? I mean, I was literally like, how could I have an account that says I made this much money, but Now I have none. And I'm taking out a PayPal loan. I maxed out my credit cards and I use my home equity loan. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And my husband's like, okay, I don't want any more home equity loans going into this business. He's like, I was like, okay. And I asked him a couple times and he was very clear and I had to respect it. I was like, okay, yeah, I have used this and you're saying you don't want me to keep using it. So I was like, okay, this has to become a business, meaning I make money that actually somehow accumulates. I mean, something has to happen, right? It can't just go through my fingers. So, so the blessing was that I got a $15,000 loan that had the capacity to become 25, but I just borrowed 15 right before it closed, just as the US was closing down in March. And so I used that money to buy Facebook ads. I used that money to help my business pivot to being more online, or actually be completely online.
Yeah.
And I had to readjust the products, I don't really have products, the services,
Yeah.
so that it would be online and to be at a price point where people who are in the middle of a pandemic are willing to pay that, because we live with so much uncertainty. You remember what the spring and the summers was like.
Yes.
So all these changes needed to happen, and I was willing to make them. I had some capital from that loan. So and I and George Floyd was murdered and Breonna Taylor was murdered. And and this was all in social media and people wanted to do something about it. And one of the things had been saying to people of European descent all along was check your own implicit racial bias.
Yes.
Well, now I actually had a service to help them do that at a price point where many, many people could do it. And that helped to turn things around.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have a service or a course that is, what is the title of it? How to speak.
Yes.
How to, go ahead.
Yeah, we have a free masterclass called How White Women Can Talk with Women of Color About Racism. In that free masterclass, we give people the option after they register to pay something forward, any amount they want, but just to chip in to help us keep offering this free thing. Because what I realized as a very, very micro enterprise without a lot of capital, I didn't have enough to only offer something for free and something that was super high priced. Because people weren't investing in a super high price because of the uncertainty of the pandemic. And the things I was giving away for free, I just had no money coming in. And, as we said, we were maxed out on all this credit. So, so that giving people an opportunity to pay for it, to chip in, meant that instead of it just being a free thing, it became something that started to pay for itself. And as it went on, it became something that started to generate, a little bit of a profit. You know what I mean? Besides paying for itself, it covered like that. And so that became a real driver in our business.
Yeah, that's amazing. And coming back to the piece around self-compassion, because this is really what, your gift to this whole to the conversation, to the movement. Maybe share a little bit about, connection between burnout and self-care, and sort of a little bit of what you're noticing in the women of color that you serve, and your message, right? Your passionate message for these women, and what supported you.
Yeah. Yeah, self-compassion and burnout. So that is definitely something that I experienced, kind of like a breakdown kind of moment.
Mm.
And and I hear it a lot from especially Black women. You just, I don't know, you ask a certain question and what you get is, I'm exhausted.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And I think it's right there on the surface for Black women, but I think to a lesser extent it's probably uh right there for women of different backgrounds. And what I mean is that if you're doing something that's countercultural, um, if you are a change maker, then you're expending emotional energy, physical energy, spiritual energy every day. And resting and restoring in the midst of suffering um, seems like you're being self-indulgent
Mhm.
or you're taking advantage of your privilege. And so what I say to everybody, people of color, people of European descent, is that self-care, cultivating self-love is the foundation. It creates, as you were saying, Isha, the spaciousness from which to engage the work for change. It's not over here and the work is over here. It's like um, this, your container, your vessel,
Mm.
space from which the work to change the world comes. And
Mhm.
if your vessel is like, you know, is full of these thoughts that are like condemning of you, um,
Mm.
that, you know, sap your energy, that question your authenticity or your rights, or you know what our thoughts are.
Yeah.
Um, if you live in that soup, um, then your ability to engage externally is could be compromised. And I say could be because I don't want to say I know what everybody's interior is like and what's working for you or what's not working for you. Um, but I ask you to check, just to check, check on your joy level. Just
Mm.
like check your gas gauge, check on your joy level, check on your energy level, and if those things are low, if it's below halfway, I recommend you
Yeah.
fill up,
Yeah.
right? Pause, stop driving. And Isha, I'm talking to me. I'm talking to Amanda right now. Stop driving, Amanda. Can I stop driving? Yes. Because then you know what? This car is going to run out of gas if you don't stop driving and fill it up. So this is where, our ego is like I don't know, I don't know what your ego says, but I can't, I shouldn't. What will happen if I don't?
Right.
As if you're not just one of a piece, but
Right.
you really are just one of a piece.
Yeah. And I think the piece around what you taught me about letting go of the outcome. Sometimes we're so invested in the work and we are so invested in the outcome, we just sort of attack it, right? We attack the work with that, like, no, it has to happen now and this way. And we get caught, we get hooked. And if we can see ourselves as just a piece, and that this is a long-term process and that we are contributing in our own unique way, it just creates a little bit more like healthy detachment, right?
Mhm.
Like pouring in with passion, but like no, seeing the bigger picture of it.
Yeah. And I think that's something that older women can communicate with younger women about. We can model to our kids. And I also noticed that, like, there's this whole thing called the napping ministry.
Oh, I love the nap industry. Yes.
Exactly. Black napping and, rest is revolutionary. And my own daughter, I have two kids, one of whom is a little bit like me, which is the go, 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 and really have to work to pull it in. And then I have one who's like, why do we need to go? Mama, I'm like, I love her because she's like, sort of like, makes me pause and realize the pace, even, what is the hurry? Like, I know the house is burning and it's been burning centuries. I mean, honestly, living with that urgency of suffering and what do I want to bring to it? You know?
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing is that I also heard this, Isha, maybe you have too, that we can be in different seasons of our lives.
Mhm.
So if you have a family member who has COVID, or if you're doing caring for small children, you're recovering from cancer, you're in a season where the emphasis of the external giving and the internal giving need to be adjusted.
That's right. That's right. Very important. Yeah.
We you know what I mean? We're not all running. We can't all be running the same at the same pace, doing the same thing. Some of us, if we find ourselves getting enlivened, energized, um, sparked,
Yeah.
empowered,
Yeah.
by what we're doing, keep doing that.
Yeah.
If that's what you get from being on the front line, for standing your ground, meeting a line of police, if that's what happens for you in that moment, I think you probably should be there,
Yeah.
right? Last time I went to one march, Isha, I'm just telling you, I was like, we did this silent vigil thing, and I was good with it. My town was good with that. And then, whatever. When you're out in the public, you're holding a sign.
Mhm.
And then we were going to march to the police station. And I said, yeah, I'm going to do that. So we start marching. And this is a march there's some conflict, honestly. But whatever. It was primarily people of color, younger people, and there were some conflicts, but whatever. I followed. That was what I said I was going to do. And but while we were marching, you know, I was like, and the slogans we were saying, what people were saying? They were saying, I can't breathe.
Mm.
And I know the importance of those words, but I didn't want to tell myself that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I I want to breathe. I want to tell myself I can breathe. And there's some other kinds of statements that we were, doing call and response with. And, what was their crime? Being Black. It's talking about people have been killed. What was their crime? They were Black. And I 100% understand that. But then part of me is like, what does this say to me? What does it say to my subconscious that it's a crime to be Black? Like, I know that's what the dominant culture's message is, but that's not what I want to tell myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and
Mhm.
then I watch a young Black woman kind of dysregulate,
Mm.
you know,
Mhm.
and in that same march, and I was like, okay, it's time for me to go. I'm just like, this is not my place.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like energetically, I'm not liking the energy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And when I was 16, 17, maybe I wouldn't even notice the energy. I don't know. But I'm 54 now, and I know what I know today. And I know, wow, this is not the right place for me. And
Mhm.
so I, found my hubby, and I was like, it's time to go, babe. I gotta go. And he was like, okay.
And even that, right? Like our minds can say something like, "Oh, but you should be here," or right there can be an expectation of, "Well, this is how it's done. This is how we bring justice." And that also takes self-compassion to be like, well, maybe this is not my way. I have this other way where I really thrive and where I love to do my work. And that's good, right? That is just my way.
Yes.
That's also self-compassion.
Yes. 100%. And I am very compassionate and admiring of people who take that rebel frontline direct confrontation approach. You know, the woman who climbed up the flagpole and just pulled down a Confederate flag, right? The people who they say disperse and they decide, no, we're going to sit down. I mean, wow. I feel the adrenaline rush just telling those two stories out loud. I admire them. I feel protective of them. I'm grateful. I know they're putting their bodies on the line. And it's not my place to put my body in those spaces from a space of guilt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is not an empowering place to come from if I'm going to be on the front line. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There's a lot of ways that you can show support to people who you feel are on the front line doing, who are in their right path. You can, there's a lot of ways you can support. You can give money. I had someone who I've never met, she sent me a whole bunch of herbs because, she really respected the work that I'm doing for racial justice. She's like, can I send you some herbs? And I was like, yes. So, give support to those people who you feel are taking on the work that needs to be done.
Yes.
Even if it's not your work, you can still support them.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you, Dr. Kemp. And where can people find you online? I'm going to include links in the show notes.
Let me see. They can find me at dramandakemp.com on my website. And I want to encourage people to check out my album called Black Girl Magic: Poems, Prayers, and Spells for Liberation and Self-Care. So it's a toolkit. It's an audio toolkit that I recommend you all check out, whether you're a Black girl or not.
Awesome. Awesome. And you also did a TED Talk.
Oh, yeah.
Which I'll include in the show notes too. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Kemp. Such a pleasure to have you here. And I'm just really grateful that you and I crossed paths when we did. It felt very, felt serendipitous. So thank you.
You are welcome.
Yeah.